a solutions engineer here at iForm Builder and Zerion software. And today our focus is going to be on building smart forms. What we're going to focus on right now, throughout this session, we'll go through an overview of smart forms, what they are and why you'd want to use them, how to add simple functions to the forms, iForm Builder built-in functions, the ZZ display value and dynamic labels, as well as reference IDs and troubleshooting while you're form building. So the first thing is, what are smart controls and why would we use them? So the what is relatively easy. They add functionality to a form. You use basic JavaScript to add these actions to different elements. If you're unfamiliar with using JavaScript, we do have some helpful tools. I have them at the bottom of this page, which we'll also share these with you. Ryan should be putting them in the chat if he hasn't done so already, but whenever we give you the presentation and everything after, we'll include these links. So that's really the what. The why is you want to cut down on human interaction with a form, so you want the user to be spending as little time as possible filling it out, but getting the best content that you can. So that's one of the reasons to use it. Another reason is you can define what a user sees based off of their selections. So maybe some of these questions are only applicable if they chose answer A. So you don't want to show all the other options, so that's another reason why you would use it. As well as by using smart controls, you can cut down on some of that human error. So our smart controls, we have the dynamic value, the condition value, the dynamic label, client validation, and the validation message. So the first one is the dynamic value. You'll use JavaScript statements, strict or conditional, to set the value of the element. For the conditional value, you'll use this when you want a statement to evaluate as true, so the element will display on the device, otherwise it'll remain hidden. So like we were saying earlier, only showing specific elements based on that user's previous selections. The dynamic label, it uses the JavaScript statements to specify the label of an element. So maybe someone said that Syracuse was their favorite basketball team. You'd use the dynamic label for the next question and say, why is Syracuse your favorite basketball team, or what Syracuse team member is your favorite? So you're able to include their answer with a question. And the last two go together. It's our client validation, where you use a custom validation logic to restrict a record from uploading unless certain values are entered. And then from there, you have to have an error message that pops up so that the user knows why they cannot continue. And that's that validation message. You'll just place that in quotes, and that's what will be shown later on. So here are just some examples of what smart controls can do. Like we said earlier, they can show or hide elements based on a user's input. They can default elements. So maybe you want to have your date and time element to always show today's date, then you can default it to do that. You can have mathematical calculations, of course. You can add hard returns to a text area to create a list based off of a user's input. And if some of this is unfamiliar to you, if you're unsure of what a hard return is, I will be showing you a demo in just a couple minutes, so you'll be able to see what exactly it is I'm talking about. This next one is to validate the user input, so that client validation. And concatenate multiple elements into one element. So, and like I said, I'll have an example of that in just a moment. And then we have the subform aggregation. So maybe you have, in your subform, you have multiple records with multiple totals. You can aggregate all those totals to be displayed on the parent form. Going forward, here are just some tips with these smart controls. The top one is you must use the element's data column name in the smart controls. A lot of people, when they're new to using the smart controls, they'll use the label versus the data column name, and then the function that they've created will not work. So always make sure that you are using the data column name of an element. The next is the table name and page level JavaScript are located in the edit form properties. You can locate that that's that first page that you see when you open up Form Builder. You can also get into it through a specific form. And we also have the use page level JavaScript for more in-depth JavaScript functions. So if you find that you're constantly using the same type of code, or you want to use a variable with the JavaScript, you can place that within the page level JavaScript, and it'll make what you have within the smart controls a lot simpler and a lot cleaner. It also works well for if you want to have a specific function happening in multiple elements. Next, we have the adding multiple conditionals to an element. So maybe you have a specific text area that you want displayed if the user selects option A, but you also want it displayed if they select option C. So you can use the double ands to include that in there, or you can add in the or. And the last two, we have the equal sign. When you use that, it's saying that this element is equal to maybe 0 or 2. Maybe you want an element to only show based off an option list. That's when you'll use the equal. And lastly, the false and the conditional value will hide the element from view on the device. So I know I just ran through a lot, and hopefully it wasn't too quick, but I'd like to give you the opportunity to ask any questions at this point of what I just discussed.
Right, and so Barrett, the one question was, of course, we're covering a lot of information, and it's being covered at a rapid pace. But we are recording this webinar, and within 24 hours, we will have it posted and a link sent back out to everyone. So if you are missing anything, you will be able to go back through and review. And there are no other questions at this time being posted.
All right, well, thank you, Ryan, and hopefully, like I said, hopefully if I'm going too fast, we will give this to you later, and you'll understand it once I show it to you. All right, so now I'm going to pull up my demo form. So just bear with me for one moment. All right, so here you should be able to see my device now, and I'm going to go into my iForm. And here I have my Smart Controls demo form. And while I'm going through this, I'm also going to have this window to the side, and it's going through what each element is, or parts of it. So this first one, we have the concatenation of elements and hard returns. So this is just a text area, and I'll just go ahead and type my name in there. And then I'll put in my last name and my age. Now from that, I have this first area, which is a read-only element that I have all the information, my first, last, and age in one line. But I also have it in a text area, which is the hard return right here. The next section is the using client validation for a future date. So here we have next scheduled visit. We have our date element popping up. So if I select today, it'll say error, please enter a future date. So that was what was placed within the customer validation message. So I'll go OK. I'll go ahead and select May 30th. Now I can continue. This next smart control shows an element based off of a user's input. So the question here is, was there any broken equipment in the lab? If I say no, nothing happens. If I say non-applicable, nothing happens. But if I select yes, then another text area shows up and it says what was broken. And I can just say, let's just say the lamp. We then have a smart option list and a ZZ display value. So this first part, we have a select and a pick list. So based on what I choose in the first options, either lift, speed, or speed and agility, will depend what shows up for the pick list for what type. So here, if I choose lift and I go into that pick list, I have arms, legs, or other. choose arms. But if I choose speed and agility, I will have jump, skip, hand-eye coordination, or other. And I'll choose other here. And now you see I do have another field that just decided to show up for the other exercise where I could type in, let's just say leapfrog. And there we go. So then we have another area that is a read-only. And going forward, we have the iForm Builder built-in functions. So the first one is the display username. So the username that I've logged in with my device is Barrett1. Then we have a mathematical functions for subform aggregation. So I'll go and open that subform. Within this subform, I've already defaulted all the number areas to 0. So here we'll go ahead and we'll put 5, 8, and 10. And now I can see with the addition, I have the subtraction and multiplication, and I'll just select done. And because this is subform aggregation, we need to have more than one subform result to see the aggregated total. So I'll go back in there and we'll add 199, 56, and 75. And now I have two more totals. And here, I'm not going to add any more records, but of course I could. So if I go back, I will see the subform aggregation addition. So I took the addition totals and added them together, and that was the result. And then I also have the average. Then at the very bottom, you see, thanks for taking the time to fill out this form today, Barrett. So what I did for that is I used the dynamic label based off of what I placed here in the top element, which said first name. All right, so now I'm going to take the device down and actually show you what it looks like within Form Builder. All right, so here we have our Smart Controls form. If you notice at the top, I did have a form label. If you have questions about that, I'd be happy to answer that, but I don't have that as a part of what we're talking about today. But continuing within our form, we have the concatenation of elements and the hard return. So within the Smart Control, for each of these elements, the first name, last name, and age, I did actually put in, I took what their data column name was, and I had equals, equals, parentheses. That's just saying this is the actual data column name, so then when I use that here, it makes sure to recognize that that's that element's name. So this, for the read-only element type, I just took all of those data column names, and in what I call the squiggly brackets, I know that's not very technical, but within the set of squiggly brackets, I have the first data column name for first name, and then plus, and then I also have 2 quotes with a space in between. The reason for that is if I didn't, then the first and last name would be right next to each other. And it'd be hard to, of course, hard to recognize the differences. And then again, we have the plus, and then 2 quotes, and I have a comma there. And that's just because in between the first and last name I wanted, and the user's age, I wanted to separate that as well. So that's for the read only. Now, for that information to have it as a hard return, I do not have the squiggly brackets. Instead, I have just the element data column names plus, and then in quotes, it's a /n, and that's in between those as well. And that what that does is that's just putting it to the next line. And I will be going through this. I just wanted to show you how I exactly built this form. And then going forward, we have the client validation for the next scheduled visit. So here we have today's date. Now I needed to include that because I needed a reference for the next element to be able to recognize when it would be a future date. So here in this element that says today's date, I said today's date equals a new date. So that's defaulting it to today's date. Then I also have the condition value as false, so that that's not being viewed by the user. And going on to the next element I have, it is client validation, and it is the next scheduled. It takes this actual data column name and says it needs to be greater than this element's number, so or this today's date. And then in parentheses, I just have the validation message. So it's relatively simple once you get the hang of how it works. Moving forward, we had this element, which was the select, and it asked, was there anything broken? Yes, no, or non-applicable. And we said that we didn't want this field to show unless they selected yes. So for the conditional value for the second item, this text element, we referenced the item before, the option list, and said if they select that first option, then that's, which is option 0, then this will show. Otherwise, it will not show to the user. Then we come down into our smart option lists. And here we have those two options, the lift and agility. And then in our next option list, this is where we added the smart option list, and we referenced the option list before and said if the user selects this first option, then these are what I want displayed. If they select the second option, then I'd like these to be displayed. Again, this is a lot, and this is the high level, but I will be breaking it down even further after I'm done going through this form. So with our iForm builder built-in functions, we have the display username, and that's iFormBuilder.username, very simply. The next one was the mathematical functions. This was actually a subform. So I'm going to reference that in the aggregation right below. So I have iFormBuilder.math.sum, that's the built-in function. And then I reference the parent table name, and then this subform element name, or the data column name, and then within that, within the subform, what element is being used. And the same goes for the average. And then this was our label where I had, thanks for taking the time to fill out this form today. And that's all in quotes, and plus the data column name where the user inputted their name. And then I also added an exclamation point. So just as a high level, that's a lot of what was done for that form. And before I go in and really go into details on each one of these, are there any questions from you?
Might be helpful if I unmute myself. There's a bunch of questions coming through here today. It's a lot of them are about the specifics of how does this work on just iPad, or is it universal across the platform? And the answer is that it is universal across the platform. iForm Builder is built for all of iOS, and we do have our Android version. The principles are the same, just depending on what type of device you're using on Android, certain elements or features may not be available. I also have a question of, am I able to do the same process and display images or take images? And exactly, so we use the entire JavaScript library. So a lot of our documentation is about our platform. However, the entire JavaScript library is at your fingertips. If you need to display certain fields or hide certain fields or create those conditional values, all of that is built into the system. I'm going to provide my personal email address as well as access to certain help desk articles as these questions are coming up, and it should assist you with bouncing back and forth and getting your arms around this. So with that, Barrett, you can continue.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to go into a little deeper of what I just showed you. So adding JavaScript functions. The first part we're going to talk about is defaulting a value of elements. So very, very easily, if you, like I said earlier, when I was using my subform aggregation and I had the mathematical equations, I did default all of those elements to 0 so that sometimes numbers would carry over if I didn't default them. So that's where I just did the data column name equals 0, or you can also use the squiggly brackets and have that happen. If you wanted it to always equal another number or a specific text, this works the same way. The other option that you have is if you want to default an element or a widget to not show until text has been placed, then you can just say whatever that text element is, dot length, and go from there. Here's a list that I got from our Customer Success Center, and it is available to you, but I just wanted to show you all the options that you have. What this is showing you right now is within the different types of elements that you have, here are some ways that you can default them. So for the date, if you have new date parentheses in your dynamic value, then that will always show the new or today's date. And that goes for the date and time as well as the time element, so that, like I said, that'll show what time it is at that point when they're looking at the form. The next is if you want to have an email where it's automatically pre-populated to go to a specific location or person, then you'd have the squiggly brackets and then in parentheses iForm kiosk, or I mean, of course, not this specific email, but whatever email that you had wanted. Same thing goes, as you can see, it continues with the same kind of concept. So in the squiggly brackets, all of those different values or numbers or text. So it's very similar with each one, but it's important to keep in mind, or at least pay attention to the date, time, and the time, and how those differentiate. So as far as adding basic math functions or the concatenation of elements, these are all done with the previous elements data column names. So here for addition, it's very simple, where you have the squiggly brackets and whatever data column name elements that you want included, you would put this in the total section. So at the bottom where I had addition and subtraction and multiplication, this is where I had all of these different functions. If for some reason you want to combine a number and a numerical value, so maybe I have that first element, I want it to be divided by 25 and then divided by the third element. It's the same kind of idea as using a data column name, except you're actually placing the number in there. Going forward with the concatenation, it's the same concept. You have the data column name plus, and then of course, like I mentioned earlier, including that space so that they're not right next to each other, and then the other data column names. For the concatenation, this has to be either text or read-only elements for this example. Then we have our dynamic label and the client validation. The dynamic label, like we said earlier, displays user's answer from a previous element in another element. So for our example today, thanks for taking the time to fill out this form, and then that was in parentheses, plus the data column name. And then we have our client validation, where you have, here we have the number, and then the data column name is greater than today's date, and then the message that comes with that. This can also, besides using it for a future date, you can also use it to say if a user needs to enter a value between two numbers. So like for this instance, between 75 and 100. Or one thing I worked on recently with a form is I used client validation with an option list. So if they didn't select a specific option, then they weren't able to continue. This was helpful when this was helpful because the form that I was building was for educational purposes. So they were able to get that feedback right away if they answered the correct answer or not. All right, any questions?
Barrett, there's been a few comments about the the complexity of how certain strings of JavaScript are written. And yes, our platform is, um, it is drag and drop to a certain extent. It also, if you have any knowledge of the JavaScript, JavaScripting in general, you're going to be able to really make the platform dance. The question has come up if we can share, a form or two. I'd be more than happy to place, even a sample form into a profile on so that you're able to see exactly how these different functions work. At the end of this webinar, I'm going to I'm going to have my contact information at the bottom. If you want to send me a profile ID, we can share one or two of these, advanced forms into your account so you can really see what those processes look like.
And I'd be happy to take some screenshots of what I had for this example too and send that along.
Perfect. That'll be included in the with the video and the documentation that comes along as well. Perfect. So Barrett, you can continue. I'm just fielding a bunch of questions here about, different types of functions, hiding pictures, very, I guess, pertinent to people's workflows, but good stuff.
Sure. All right, so just to reiterate what we just went through in the last couple slides with the defaulting of the elements and the mathematical equations and the concatenation, a lot of that was done with just having those squiggly brackets and the data column names and then adding those pieces together. All right, so we have iForm Builder built-in functions, and these are very helpful as far as you not having to worry about putting in more code. So here are the four. The first one is the iFormBuilder.username, and like it says here, displays the username of the person signed into the device. All of these need to be in the dynamic value. I just want to make sure that was clear too. So then we have the iFormBuilder.math.sum, so that'll add the values from the records taken in a subform and displays the sum of the values within the parent form. The average finds the average from the records taken in the subform and displays the average on the parent form. And then the getNext sequence, this allows the user to keep track of how many records they have provided. Not many people have found the getNext sequence. I guess the getNext sequence is great if it meets your need, but I found a lot of people haven't been using it. But if you can, I'd be happy to hear and happy to go through how to do that with you. So here we have our subform aggregation, and this is taken from the example that I just showed you today. So within the dynamic value in the parent form, where I had the subform aggregation totals, I would use this code or this setup to display that aggregated total. So here it's the iFormBuilder.math.sum. And then the table name, this is the parent table name, the subform element data column name. So while in the parent form, what that actual element is called, the element on the subform, and the same setup goes for the average, the iFormBuilder.math average. Again, so that's the parent name, and then the subform element while in the parent form, and then the actual element on the subform. So for my example, it was iFormBuilder.math.sum, and this was what I had as my parent name, which was, my initials, Smart Controls Demo, March 2014, parent. Then I have the period, and then the subform to aggregate totals, so that was that element on the parent form, and then the addition 1, which was the element within the subform. If you do want to aggregate, do subform aggregation from grandchild form into that child form. So we have the parent form, the child form, and the grandchild form. You can do that. Just make sure that you start this naming with that parent form still, and then you'd go into that the child form and then the grandchild information from there. Oh, I think I must have gone too fast on that one. So let me go ahead. Ryan, were you going to say something? Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, so let me go ahead and maybe I put that question slide too early, so sorry about that, you guys. The next is the adding smart controls to option lists. So here we have, like I showed you earlier, it's to show an additional element only when a specific option is selected. So when you choose to do that, you want to place this in a conditional value. So far we've really been going over that dynamic value, and everything we've talked about, it goes within the dynamic value. And going forward with this and the option list, you want to place this in the conditional value because, again, this is choosing a statement that says if the data column name equals this, then you show this element. Otherwise, do not show this element. So in your option list manager, you can actually see what number the option is, and you'll always start with 0. So if you have a list that has 500 different elements, then you'll want to make sure that you go into the advanced section of your option list manager and see what number it actually is. So here I can see that my other is number 2. So then in the conditional value, I reference the above option list, which the data column name was what type, and I have that to equals 2. Excuse me. And then going forward with the same option list, I also had this as a smart option list. So what that, like we said earlier, you only want to show specific elements based off of what the user has selected previously. So for this example, it's again that equal, and I'm referencing that table before. So I have the other option equals 0, and this is in the advanced section of the smart option list. So that means when I have the other location equals 0, all the options between this selection and this selection will be shown when they check that first option in the previous list. And going forward, then this one, starting here at option number 3, this will only be displayed in the options below if the user selects option number, the option number 1 in the previous list, which would actually be the second option. But that's why it's important to remember that we always start with 0. So with both option lists, making a smart option list as well as showing a specific element only if a specific condition has been met. Both of them, as you can see, meet the same kind of standard, which is using the previous data column name and equals whatever that option list was. So for instance, when someone was asking about using images, if you had a specific if you had a pick list and if they chose the third option, you would use whatever the previous data column name was for that element and say, only show me this picture if it equals 0 or equals 3. So this previous example is how you would show images based off of a selection. So then we come down to ZZ display value, which is a built-in function as well. The reason you'd want to use ZZ display value is because right now the data that you're collecting from the user when they choose an option is the key value. So here, this key value is what is always being recorded with the metadata. And so maybe there's a time where you don't want, or you want the user to actually see what they have selected. So you'll choose to use the ZZ display value. And that is very simply all you do in the dynamic value of a text or read-only element. You place ZC display value underscore and then the option list data column name. And then, like I said, this will show exactly what the user had selected. Another reason that you might want to do this is because there may be a time where you are using a smart table search and you want the user to select something from an option list, and then that will pre-populate the rest of the form. So if you were to do that, then you'd have to create a pick list and then have the ZZ display value in a text area right underneath the pick list, and that's actually what you'd reference for the Smart Table search. So that's another reason that you'd want to use this. So we have the dynamic label, but we also have, like we just went through, the ZZ display value. So when the dynamic label, there's always a time and a place to use that, rather with the ZZ display value, which should only be used for the option and pick list. And the dynamic label can be used for text elements to be a part of the next questions rather than actually displaying what was shown in the pick list or option list. So here you can see for the example code for the dynamic label, it starts with, thanks for taking the time to fill out this form today. And then you have the data column name, which was user underscore first underscore name underscore data column name. And then for the ZZ display value, again, you just place that and you do underscore and whatever the option list data column name was. All right, before I go into that questions, I know the option list can be a little much or a little confusing, so I wanted to show you on our form again what it was exactly that it looked like. So here was our first form, our first pick list, our select option list, and this is what we reference later on in the next pick list. So for the second pick list or option list, this is where I went into the advanced section and I did the data column name of the element before equals 0, and then the data column name equals 1. If I, like I said, if I had more options, then it would continue, but this was a smaller list. Then I have the other text field that I only want to display if they've selected that option. So here in the smart control, in the conditional value, since it's about the view, I do the data column name equals 2. So that's saying they chose that third option. And I also had another field underneath, so if they chose the second other field. I could have said that I could have done the and. I don't know. I'm looking back at this now. I don't know what I was thinking, why I didn't do that. But if I had wanted to, I could go in here and I could say to display this as well when they choose that selection. Or if I didn't want to do and, I could also do the or. And then going forward, we had the aggregation. So just to review that again, that was the iFormBuilder.MathSum. Then I have the parent table name dot this element name, the data column name. So I had gone up here and I had just copied that and pasted it within the smart control after the parent name, and then comma and the element within that subform. So I'll go ahead and open that subform to show you what that is looking like as well. Oh, it was right on top. Sorry about that. So I'm going to load that form. So now in the parent form, I am referencing this addition item. So addition 1, I had just copied that and I pasted that right at the end, and then I closed the bracket. And I did the same thing for the following aggregation. All right. Oops. So are there any questions right now, Ryan, that I can answer or that you can answer before we go into the reference IDs?
Yeah, Barrett. So there's a few questions around using your DZ um, DZ display values, and if there's a way that you can actually use it as throughout the whole form on every element uh, versus just on I guess where option lists are being used. And there again, it's going to come down to, I mean, we're demonstrating some of the more advanced features here. It's a matter of whatever your use case dictates in terms of really being able to back into the platform. If anything, this hour is a matter of us, one, showing where all of this functionality occurs. The how-tos are going to be very specific to your use cases, so it's just going to be a matter of us, formulating our questions and I guess your thoughts and your workflow, and then I would say 99.9% of the time the functionality is there. It's just a matter of um, either using the right JavaScript or the right functionality, or also collaborating with some of our team to really figure out how to get the most out of that functionality. With that, a lot of the other questions are around very how do certain things um, or how do we display certain fields? Is there any documentation on these elements? So I've just been sharing links to those individuals across the board. The last thing is there's been a few questions about where a profile ID is located. If you are on a dedicated database, we need the dedicated database, but the profile ID is located in the top right corner of the admin control panel. And Barrett can show you that right now, right next to the logout button. That's the profile ID that we would need in terms of being able to share one of the more advanced forms with you. With that, Barrett, you can continue.
Sure, thank you, Ryan. So just to reiterate with the ZZ display value, that is used with option lists to of course, display the text rather than that key value. Within the key value, I'm just going to go into my option list manager. Here you can actually change what is being displayed for this. Right now I have lift, but maybe I would want to have lift 1 or something different. Then I could actually change that here. If there's any time that you may have repeating text because you are using the smart option list, then you'd want to, each item has to have its individual key value. So you can change that here to make sure that each one is different. All right, now just before I forget, and while we go into this part, the reference IDs we're going to talk about are in the Edit Form Properties page. So what I had just done is I'm going to go back to my form. Here we have this Edit button, and I just click that, and that'll bring me to my Edit Form Properties page. So this is what we're going to be talking about for the next couple minutes. But I also wanted to show you, earlier I had just briefly mentioned about the page level JavaScript. We won't be going into any more detail, but I did want to show you what it would look like. So here's an example of where you place the JavaScript, the page level JavaScript, and then use the variable in the dynamic value. So I would, whatever I had placed in here, I could, wherever I'm calling to it later on in the form or forms, I would place it. I would place that exact variable, just that in the dynamic value. So going forward with our presentation, we're going to jump into our reference IDs. So we have in here our reference ID, we have 1, 3, 5, 2, 4. So 1 through 5, basically. I guess I could have said that. Reference ID 1, if you're using iForm Kiosk, you should be familiar with that. The other two, reference ID 3 and 5, I very rarely do I use, but if you have any questions about them, I would be happy to go through that with you. A lot of the reference ID 3, I'm really, I'm not sure if anyone really knows what it's used for, but I know reference ID 5 is used for one of our pieces of hardware, which is the Zebra printer as well. And we also, each element has its own reference ID as well. So if I were to select this specific element and go under reference ID, I have an area that I can paste a specific code that we have or that we're using within iForm Builder. For this example, I have placed in here for the divider element skip report. And that, like it says, it will not be a part of the actual report when you look at it later on in the PDF or the other versions. But let's dive in and go a little bit more detail. So the reference ID 2, it is all about the view. That's how I think of it. It's a little catchy way. And it's about what the user sees when they're looking at the records on the device. So right now, when you have a list of records, usually it will automatically show the 3 elements in the beginning. Well, you may not want that. Maybe you want the element, an element at the end to be displayed or an element in the middle. So you can choose what exactly you want displayed by using the display field equals and that element number. The element number can be found within the info section of a specific element. So if I go down to the bottom, I can see that the element index is 15. So if I wanted to make sure that this field was displayed within that quick record view, then I would put in the number 15 for this display field. The other options you have are sort field, and exactly what it sounds like. It'll sort that section and put it in that order that you have placed it here. You can also combine those if you wish. And moving forward onto reference ID 4. So this is to override the device settings of the delete on upload for an individual form. So for the specific form, you want to make sure that the user can't see any of the previous records that they've completed. So, and they may have set up on their device that they have checked off delete on upload. Now you can actually override those settings and say record delete on upload or record no delete on upload. And this is all in the reference ID section. So if there's any point that you forget, you can go into the Customer Success Center and you will see this information. The element reference ID, there, like I just showed you, each element you can place a different reference ID in there. The three options that you have are element skip report, element report, and element skip email PDF. So the element skip report, like I said, it's very clear. It's going to skip it. The second is the element report. So right now, with every label that you have in a form, it will not be shown within a report. So by clicking or by putting an element report within that reference ID, that label will be included within the report. The next one is the element skip email and PDF. So that's saying do not put this in the PDF reports or the email, but please keep it within the data views and the data feeds. All right, since we're wrapping up and we're at the end of our hour now, I just want to make sure I go through some of these troubleshooting methods as well as a couple more housekeeping issues maybe. The first is the check spelling and syntax. A lot of times I know that the most frustrating thing is when you've taken the time and you put in what you think will be the perfect JavaScript in the dynamic value, and then you look at your device and it doesn't work. Then make sure, go back and check. And there's a lot of times that I'll always just copy the data column name to make sure I haven't messed any of that up. The next is, the data column name need to be database friendly. The iForm Builder platform won't actually save this, it won't save your form unless all the data column names are database friendly. So if that's the case, you'll have to refresh and change it so that your data column name is different from the label if you have that checked off. The next is to always make sure that all the brackets are closed. If you're familiar with JavaScript, then I'm sure you know this. But it will, if you leave open brackets, then it'll try to continue the function that it's trying to do instead of stopping it. So make sure to check those 3 things if you're having any issues within your form building experience. We also have two other tools here that you can use just to test your JavaScript to make sure that it's accurate. And then the third thing here is the not a number. So if there's a time when you're using JavaScript and you are receiving that, then that means either you have maybe you don't have the number in front of your JavaScript function, or well, that will most likely be the case. So like you saw earlier today with my date function, to choose a previous date, I had number before I had the data column name. And before I go on, I want to make sure I show you that just because I think that would be helpful for you to see again. Of course, I can't find it right well, and I'm looking for it. But that is, when you use that, just make sure you have number and then in parentheses the data column name and moving forward. So after our troubleshooting, I want to make sure that you are aware of our form building support. So I know that, of course, Ryan and I are here for you 110%, and we want to make sure that the forms that you're building are successful. But we also have these other options for you. We have Customer Success Center articles, which Ryan has been sharing with you as I've been going through some of this. We also have the option to go on our website and chat with an iForm Builder agent. So you may just have a simple question, or you want them to look quickly at maybe the JavaScript that you're writing. You can go ahead and put that in the chat, and they'd be happy to help you. You can also submit a ticket through the Customer Success Center. And you can maybe take some screenshots if you're not sure why some of your form's not working. If it's simple stuff, they'd be happy, and anything, just send it their way and they'll be happy to look at it or point you in the right direction. And the fourth free one that I have here is our Kickstart. If you're a part of a growing and emerging plan, it does come with a Kickstart program, so if the company hasn't taken part on it, please make sure you tell someone to get on that and to take some of these. We do go through form building a little slower, and as well as diving into each individual form at that time. You can also purchase some of our on-site and remote training courses, as well as our implementation support. Our implementation support it comes in 4-hour chunks, and if you choose to purchase that, you can use that for form building, or you can also use it for project implementation. With the form building, you can either have someone sit down with you while you're actually building that form and go step by step on what you should do. Or you can, if you don't have time to build it out yourself, you can have us build that out for you. And then we have our upcoming training opportunities. So we have our Form Building 101 training, which Ryan's going to talk about in a little bit more detail in just a few minutes. But that's on Tuesday, June 3rd, and it's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and it's in Herndon, Virginia. He'll give you this link, and then if you choose to sign up for this, please make sure that you include the promo code so that you can get it 50% off. The next webinar that we have is focused on automation. So you're going to learn the basics of integration with the iForm Builder data and third-party integration tools like Clipfolio. And we'll also show off our Zapier app that we have right now in Zapier, and some other fun tools and how to use those. And if you need to get in touch with me, my email address is barrettjohannesson@iformbuilder.com. And that's it from me. I'd be happy to answer any questions, comments, or anything else that you want to throw at us. Ryan and I are ready.
Perfect. So just to elaborate on that, we understand that there's, like I said, a lot of content, a lot of different functionality, and oftentimes people want to have that one-on-one hand-holding. What we're offering is in-house training in the iForm Builders headquarters in Herndon, Virginia. I'm sending the link through here, but it's a full day of training. We'll even buy you lunch. We actually just recently did one back in March, and we really got to dive into a lot of the advanced form building features. The other thing is you have access to our team. You're going to be able to ask, the questions, build the forms appropriately, and also, start to get everything around what you're trying to accomplish out. And, we're not in the training business. We're not in the selling of course business. However, it does take a extremely knowledgeable person and a lot of time and energy to work with you to get there. So, our goal here is for you to become power users and really be able to expand how iPhone Builder spreads through your organization. So if you have any questions on that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Also, for the following webinar that's coming up in about a month, I'm including on the chat feature here the GoToMeeting registration link. That too will be a free 1 hour, very high level overview. I know we weren't able to customize or go into vivid detail into your specific workflow. However, these are really broad stroke trainings to, one, show you what's possible, but also to build that capacity in terms of, I may be able to consider this, or I should consider this other functionality or feature. And what our goal is for the next webinar, we really preach this whole concept of SAMR, where you're first substituting the paper with the device, and then you're able to augment those forms. So you're able to, create different types of skip logic or validation of the forms directly on the device. But once that form or that record leaves the device, that's really where the power of iForm Builder exists. So once you can start really integrating the data that's collected on the device and automatically having it do different types of functions and features, or creating dashboards or updating backend systems or being mapped automatically, that's really where, no matter what we charge or whatever the fee is for iForm Builder, the ROI is exponential. And I mean, we have customers that are, sending millions of transactions a month through the platform. It's a really powerful tool. And I think even some of the questions that were coming through, you really got to see what is available, the depth at which you're able to take the iPhone Builder platform. It is more than just the drag and drop functionality. However, for real business, problems and real business, workflows, our platform is bending over backwards for a lot of these organizations. So with that, I really appreciate all of you taking time out of your day to join us here. I will be recording this. It is being recorded, I should say. All of you will receive an email within the next, say, 24 to 30 hours once we get it posted on our site. If you have any other questions, we're readily available. I'm also going to include my personal email address in the chat as well. If I can help with anything, if you have any other questions, both Barrett and I will make ourselves available. And with that, I'm going to end the webinar. Thank you so much for your time and energy. And thank you again for being great customers of iPhone Builder. You take care.